Hi, we're going to take a second to look over the parts of the flexible learning cohort that will be meaningful to you from the BPS lens, looking at the things that we do in Bloomington and what flexible learning means to us here, as opposed to other terms that we're going to be seeing throughout our time together, such as blended, tech-rich, and others.
So our 4 objectives in this presentation are to examine the elements of NTL, examine the RAT framework, examine our core tools, and examine the definition of flexible learning.
If you're in this group, you're probably already familiar with NTL, Next Technologies for Learning. This is the mission of NTL. We're all striving to personalize learning to support students along their pathway to career and college readiness. And so very intentionally, there's 3 elements to NTL. Digital content means that we want to make sure that teachers have the time to create meaningful experiences for students to interact with on their devices. We don't want to be in a situation where we're just giving teachers and students a device and not actually having those meaningful experiences. So that might mean time to create resources, activities, and assessments for your students. We're also focused on anytime, anywhere learning. This is really stretching our thinking on what it means to give students more control over the time, place, path, and pace that they learn. That could mean learning from times outside the school day or different models of learning within the classroom. We're also focused on personalized learning, and one of the products of that are personalized growth plans, where really what we're trying to do is make sure that students, families, and teachers all have the right information at the right time. So in a real one-liner approach, digital content, connecting learners to teacher-selected or created content. Anytime, anywhere learning, giving students that control, time, place, path, and pace. Personal growth plans, getting the right information to the right people at the right time so we can all make good decisions.
So this is a peek at the timeline of NTL and how it's rolled out. We began in middle schools in 2013-14 and added 7th and 8th grade in 14-15. High school went 1-to-1 this year, and in elementary we are in year 0 gearing up to go 1-to-1 in grades 3-5 with Chromebooks and 1-3 with iPads next fall. And the really neat part of this graphic is the word at the bottom that says beyond, never turning back. We truly believe that this technology that we're providing for teachers and students is not going away. It's something that we are investing in. It's an all-in effort. And so being a part of this cohort is just one of the first steps to really investing in that thought and getting yourself and your students ready to interact with these devices.
Hopefully you've heard of the RAT framework. This is really just a research-based framework for tech integration. It encourages mindfulness when we're applying technologies and tools into our instruction. We like the RAT framework. It's based out of the U of M. We like it because it empowers teachers to self-assess technology integration. We also like it because as you move up RAT, we begin to move up the higher order thinking skills in order to really make sure that we're using those instructional tools well. And we also start to see that students are engaged. They start to have more authentic relationships with the things that they're doing, and a lot of their work is student-led. But the best part about it is the learning targets always remain the same as they would have without the technology. We're still accomplishing and learning the same things. We're just analyzing our approach to it and seeing how we can open it up to more opportunities for students. In the first level of RAT, it's merely just taking a task and moving it to something digital. Note-taking on paper, now you're note-taking on a laptop. But in amplification, students have more opportunities to do more. Perhaps now they can interact with other students, or a teacher can provide feedback on the notes that they've been taking. The next step into transformation means that students are actually creating, connecting, and really having a sense of community in their work.
We're going to examine Bloomington's core tools. We like to say that these are tools worth investing in. We have 3 core tools in Bloomington, which are Google Apps, Moodle, and the Hub. Google Tools we can use for collaboration, creativity, and productivity. So as you're starting to design lessons and create digital content, it's good to think about, can I accomplish what I'm trying to do with students using a Google tool? Moodle is where we're going to be housing our digital content and also providing that anytime, anywhere learning experience for students. So right now you may have a Moodle that you're just using as a teacher to store the digital content that you're making. The long-term goal would be to flip that Moodle around and use it for that anytime, anywhere learning piece. So imagine your students are enrolled in that Moodle and able to move through that content at their own pace when they're ready. And finally, the Hub is our third core tool. We're keeping students and families connected to your classroom, thinking about having everything in one place, one login for all the information you might need.
So within this cohort, we're going to examine the definition of flexible learning. We're going to see a lot of terms related to flexible learning. And so what is flexible learning in the BPS perspective versus blended learning that you're going to see often throughout this course? In many situations, we see technology being used in a way that is technology rich. This is neither blended nor flexible. Instead, it's using technology in a way to move all kids to the same activities at the same time. We'll see devices, but students aren't necessarily having any control over the time, pace, path, or place of their learning. And these are some of those common examples that you might see around you. When we look at blended learning, we're really starting to move, and if you take it through the lens of the RAT framework, blended learning is amplification that moves towards transformation. In this instance, students will have at least some control over that time, place, path, and pace. And these are, again, some of the examples you might see around you. Flipped classroom, you might know somebody who's either already teaching this way, or many of you have started working towards this model from your past experience in this cohort. Station rotation, the idea that the classroom has many places to be, some of that small group work, while other students in a different station might be working on skill building or accessing new content. Lab rotation, I think that we might see this in some instances, but it's one of those things that we'll be moving away from as we don't see that sort of computer lab model anymore. Traditionally, you may have seen in the past some time in a classroom given to moving an entire class of kids down to a lab for an activity. And then we also see flex. So in Bloomington, think of a way that maybe you have seen students having more opportunities for that choice in picking their time, place, path, and pace. And in Rich Virtual, if you've ever experienced anything like a hybrid program, you might have also seen something like this in Bloomington. And so with flexible learning, we start to move more and more towards the T in transformation. We start to see that students have increasing control, not just a little bit, of the time, place, path, and pace for their learning. So this is where we start to envision maybe something that's not a current reality, but thinking of models that can get us there. And so the reason that we've actually named our cohort the flexible learning cohort instead of a blended cohort is because we think that ultimately we're keeping that opportunity for us to really expand beyond those definitions provided in blended learning. Thinking about what would it mean if we really gave ultimate control over time, place, path, and pace. And so in accordance with all things NTL, we really do believe that flexible learning will help us personalize learning to support students along their pathway to career and college readiness. At the end of this activity, you'll see that if you have any questions about any of this content, we've got a Today's Meet link in the Moodle. You can go ahead and add your questions there, and if you feel that you can answer someone else's, go ahead and go for it. See you online in a few seconds.